U.S. has once again crossed the line by moving forward with a large arms sales to Taiwan. If the deal goes through, how will China react? Meanwhile, U.S. companies have been granted another 90 days to finish their businesses Huawei, which the White House has branded a national security threat. How will the Chinese telecoms giant adapt to this challenge? Welcome to The Point, an opinion show coming to you from Beijing. I'm Li Xin. On Tuesday, the Trump administration again interfered in China's internal affairs by formally approving a $8 billion arms sales to Taiwan, the largest in 20 years, saying it would, quote, help improve security of the recipient and assist in maintaining political stability, military balance and economic progress. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs demanded that Washington drop the plan immediately or, quote, bear all the consequences. Will the arms sales improve or worsen the security situation in the region? For the White House, besides money and jobs, is this a bargaining chip in its trade war with China? Joining me for the discussion in the Beijing studio are Dr. Zhao Hai, a research fellow at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, and Einar Tangen, a political and economic affairs commentator. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Before we go on the discussion, let's first hear what China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson Geng Shuang said about this arms sales.
The
U.S. arms sales to Taiwan severely violate international law and basic principles of international relations. They also severely violate the One China principle and the 3 China-U.S. joint communiques, especially the August 17 communique, and constitute severe interference in China's internal affairs and undermine China's sovereignty and security interests. China firmly opposes that and has lodged solemn representations and strong protests to the U.S. side. China will take all necessary measures to safeguard its interests, including sanctioning U.S. firms involved in arms sales to Taiwan.
The $8 billion arms sales included 66 new F-16 Block C and D fighter jets, which is, as I said, the largest in the past 20 years. And these F-16 Block C and D variations are the newer version known as Viper, which is an upgraded version of the X-16 family. Now, the deal would also include 75 engines, generators, computers, and 20mm guns. If approved, Einar, how serious will such a badge of arms sales be for Taiwan?
Well, in terms of military situation, it doesn't really change anything. Another 66 planes is not going to change the dynamics or the equation between mainland and Taiwan. So it's not clear why they're doing it. It seems that this is more of a political move by Taiwan to say, look, I got these planes. The fact is, they had asked for F-35s, which is the most advanced fighter. They didn't get that. They didn't get the V version, which, as you were saying earlier, is the highest version of the F-16. So it's also a bragging point for Trump. He says, oh, look, I've made a great sale. I'm the great businessman, the great deal maker, and look, I'm creating jobs, especially at a time when he's having problems. But there's obviously some dissension, as you were saying earlier. This was leaked out of his office that this was going to happen. Obviously, it's kind of embarrassing because this is not a very sensitive time. This is a very sensitive time between China and the U.S., especially on the trade deal.
So, Zhao Hai, do you agree with what Einar says, that in essence these sales will not be very dangerous, but the political posturing or the signal is more meaningful?
I want to add some points to Einar's comments just now. Number one, of course, on principle, this is a violation of One China policy, which the U.S. government has said it's continue to uphold. And secondly, this is a violation of 3 communiques between U.S. and China. So this is on principle, really, the U.S. side is making a very bad decision. And secondly, if this deal goes through, that does not only improve Taiwan military's defense capability, but also actually improve its striking capability and also tighten the connection between the Taiwan's military and the U.S. military. Because of those advanced airplanes and other weaponry, they have data links that can link the Taiwan's military with the U.S. In the time of war, that will greatly improve their capacity.
So what is the intention of selling this kind of weapon for the United States? Obviously, from what you just said, it sounds like this is the very first time that the U.S. is selling this kind of weapon to Taiwan. Does it mean that they want to bundle the two sides together in case there is some kind of military action from the mainland?
This is actually because of the change of U.S. national security strategy. As we know, by the end of 2017, the U.S. has already seen China as a strategic competitor. And it stated that it has to support Taiwan's self-defense capability. That's on one side. The other side is that actually the Taiwan, its own so-called government is actually advocating, trying to lobby U.S. lawmakers and also the Trump administration, trying to increase military sales to the Taiwan island. So I think you combine those factors, right now that the U.S. actually continuing its trajectory of escalating or upgrading the military relationship with Taiwan.
And yeah, I would just like to add one point to that. What I was trying to say is that militarily it might not be that big issue, except the coordination. But the fact is that the U.S. Has been upgrading diplomatic ties with Taiwan. It has been sailing warships through the Taiwan Straits. This is a kind of a gradual step up. Now, it might be part of Donald Trump's idea of including putting pressure on China for a trade deal. But this is the kind of thing which we call sleepwalking into confrontation. Because it's just one step after another. No one thinks any one step is going to tip it over, but at some point, this is a red line for China. And there's no way that they'll allow this to happen.
But China has been, making it very clear, loud and clear, stop what you're doing. Stop sleepwalking into a very dangerous territory. I don't mean physical territory, as well as a very controversial territory. Why does the U.S. do it still? I mean, you talked about, Zhao Hai, you talked about the U.S.'s strategy having shifted towards seeing China as a strategic competitor. But again, do they not see the kind of danger that they might get themselves involved in, the kind of miscalculation that might happen because of the stepping up of weaponry in that region?
There are a couple of factors. First of all, as we discussed before, the Trump administration is testing the water, going into this gray area. They're trying to not step across the red line. However, they're trying to get closer to the red line, challenging China and trying to get closer.
What is the red line in their eyes?
Meaning that they support Taiwan independence. So far, they're still saying publicly that their government is supporting one China policy. But in reality, in practice, as Einar pointed out, they have recently passed Taiwan Travel Act. They also passed Taiwan Reassurance Act. All those recent legal actions, meaning that the U.S. government is supporting a higher level of interaction.
That is also the red line for China, right?
Yes.
The Chinese government has made it very clear that it's absolutely not going to tolerate any such act.
Yeah,
so what's going to happen?
Well, this is the problem. Even the people who are watching this show right now don't, they say, oh, we hear that a lot. It is not something that you should dismiss. This is extremely serious. Taiwan is in the Constitution. It is part of China. There is no separating it. Any moves to do so will trigger an armed confrontation, and there should be no doubt about that. This is so serious, and yet what you have is Donald Trump and his advisors like Bolton playing chicken.
And it's very puzzling, actually, that President Trump said on Sunday that Taiwan is, quote, going to use it very responsibly. It's like giving fire to someone and say, you're going to use it very responsibly. I don't know whether he's telling the child or telling the people watching. And then he added, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of jobs. Is it about money that he's, doing this, Dr. Zhao? Well,
remember, Trump essentially is a businessman. From the very beginning, he has no deep understanding of U.S.-China relations or international relations at all. Remember, right after, even before he took over the White House, he received a phone call from Tsai Ing-wen. And after China's protesting,
for him, there's
nothing to worry about.
Yeah, nothing wrong with getting a phone call. But for China, it's a very serious matter.
And this time, too, he's using creating jobs as an excuse to justify this kind of sales, regardless of the diplomatic and political economic consequences.
And the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, also said that these sales will help improve the security situation of the recipient, meaning Taiwan, assist in maintaining political stability, military balance, and economic progress. are these going to happen if there are more weapons?
Oh, no, no. I mean, that's like saying more guns is going to make everybody safe. These kinds of nonsensical arguments are a staple. They're saying that by, keeping Taiwan strong, peace through strength, this kind of nonsense of things. All they're doing is inflaming the situation. The U.S. has recognized that there is only one China. That has been the policy. There has been no change. But you have them, as you say, playing chicken, constantly trying to feint. And the problem is that they're using military, they're using political and economic, in essence, to get economic concessions. This has not been done since World War I and II. This is the danger people should be paying attention to.
They shouldn't be expecting this at this moment either, I guess. Dr. Zhao, because Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs has said, drop the plan immediately, otherwise you're going to bear all the consequences. But we've heard this in the past, right? In July, the U.S. approved $2 billion, administration approved $2 billion US, and it seems that we haven't seen any drastic consequences yet. So what's going to happen this time, people ask?
I would expect if this deal, $8 billion US, particularly 66 airplanes sales to Taiwan, if approved, there will be severe consequences. And this time it will be economic consequences on U.S. companies. First of all, I want to emphasize at this time that the U.S. action actually is starting an arms race in the Asia-Pacific. Not only on the Korean Peninsula, but also the Taiwan Strait, South China Sea. Everything they're doing is not making the region safer. It's actually tipping the balance off, making the arms race more possible and more of a reality.
But people would say, some people would say, look, the mainland has been sending warships and encircling Taiwan and crossing the middle line in the straits. So they want to, in order to keep the status quo, they want to embolden the other side as well. What would be your reaction?
Well, the source of that is because the Taiwan government, since taking office, has never agreed to the One China policy, and that's the fundamental problem. If Taiwan followed the previous Taiwan local government recognizing the One China principle, then China would not have to use military means to actually stop this kind of gradual independence movement.
And let's not forget that the mainland also cancelled individual tourist schemes to Taiwan, so Taiwan's economy has already been hit, and with more weapons on the Taiwan island, will the economic progress be promoted as well?
No, of course not. But I think it's a little simpler. If somebody surrounds you and your area and threatens, in essence, to blockade you, and then they put forward a policy saying that you're a strategic competitor, right? And you're dependent on resources. What do? You create the Belt and Road Initiative. But it still doesn't do away with the fact that the U.S. has almost 400 bases around the Asian seas, and they have been using them aggressively. China has been responding not by trying to take over countries or start wars, but by simply saying, look, we have a duty to protect our trade. We need resources coming in and going out. This is why this canard that somehow China is going to interfere with freedom of navigation is absolutely silly. China would only be hurting itself, no one else.
Yeah, but in terms of sovereignty, in terms of territorial integrity, these are absolute no-goes for China. I think that message really has to be taken very seriously. Okay, many thanks to my guests, Dr. Zhao Hai, a research fellow at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, and Einar Tangen, a political and economic affairs commentator.